Hey guys, you are on day 4 of decimals, multiplying decimals. So as always, as you start taking notes, make sure your notes look just like my PowerPoint. Okay, so remember the other day when I told you to take notes regarding multiplication and division of decimals on your addition and subtraction note-taking page? Well, today that becomes relevant because we want to make sure that we remember the difference between the algorithms for addition and subtracting and multiplication and division. Okay, so let's go ahead and write down our steps, and then I'm going to just tell you a little way to remember that special note that I had you take. All right, so to multiply numbers with decimals, follow these 4 steps. Number 1, line up the numbers vertically. Okay, this is different than addition and subtraction. Remember, in addition and subtraction, I had you line up the decimals. Now we're going to line up the numbers. And the way I remember this is I say line up digits, not decimals. Okay, so we're going to line up digits, not decimals. Step 2 is to multiply. Step 3 is to count up the number of decimal places in both numbers in the problem. You should remember that we call those numbers factors. Then step 4 is to count the same number of places in your answer or your product and put the decimal in that place. Go ahead and pause the video right now and make sure that you have all of these notes written on your notes page exactly as it appears on the screen. All right, let's go ahead and look at some examples now. On your page, you have 8 times 1 and 5/10. Okay, our first step is to line up the numbers or the digits vertically. I like to put the number with more digits on top. That's how we've been doing multiplication or multi-digit multiplication for a very long time. So it should look like this. So if we multiply this out, we've got 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 1 is 1, plus 4 is 12. So we multiplied. Now our step 3 is to count up the number of decimal places in both factors in the problem. I only have one of my factors with the decimal, and that's right here. It has 1 decimal place, so that means I count now my step 4 is to count the same number of decimal places in my product. So we just go over here and we count 1 and then put my decimal place right there. And then my answer is 12. Let's look at the next one. We have 2 and 32 hundredths times 45 hundredths. So I'm going to line up my numbers vertically. Oh, we've got the answer already. Well, let's look and see how we got that. But I'm going to next multiply. So 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 1, 16. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. And 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9. Now I need to add those. 6 plus 8 is 14. 1 plus 2 is 2 plus 2 is 4. 1 plus 9 is 10. Okay, now I look at my step 4. I'm going to count the number of the number of decimal places in my factors, and then add that same number of decimal places in my product. So up here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places in my factors. So I'm going to count over in my product 1, 2, 3, 4, and my decimal place goes right there. And my answer is 1 and 44 thousandths. All right, now you've got some toyos, so go ahead, pause the video, work those toyos, and then come back when you're ready. Make sure you follow all the steps that you just wrote down on your notes page. All right, let's look at this first problem. We have 12 and 5/10 times 22 hundredths. So our first step, of course, is to line up the numbers vertically. And then we're going to multiply. So 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. And 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, then we add. This is the last part of our multi-digit multiplication algorithm. 2 plus 5 is 7. 2 plus nothing is 2. Okay, now our last step, remember, is to count up the number of decimal places in each of our factors. So we have 1 up here and 2 down here, so 1, 2, 3. Then our step 4 is to count over that many decimal places in our product. So 1, 2, 3. And our answer is 2 75/100ths. Let's look at letter B. We have 3 87/100ths times 63/100ths. So let's line up our digits, not our decimals, remember, and then let's multiply. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 8 is 24, plus 2 is 26. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. Go to the next line, put a 0 in there as a placeholder. 6 times 7 is 42. 6 times 8 is 48, plus 4 is 52. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 5 is 23. Now we're going to add those up. 6 plus 2 is 8, 1 plus 2 is 3, 1 plus 3 is 4, 2 plus nothing is 2. And remember, our last step is to count up the number of decimals in each of our factors and then add those into the product. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to go down here and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And our answer is 2 and 4,381 10,000ths. Okay, so decimals are like fractions. They are less than a whole. So that means if you have a decimal that you're working with that's less than 1, when you multiply that by your other factor, you're going to get a product that's less than that other factor. So let me show you what I mean. So let's just go through these together. 4 times 2, let's take that first one. We all know that. That's 8. That's not hard. 4 times 1.5. Okay, if I just reason about this for a second, 4 times 1.5 is going to give me a product that's more than 4 because we've got the 1 there, plus another half of 4. So 4 times 1.5 is 6. And if you were to follow the algorithm and work that out, oops, I don't know why my pen keeps doing that. You would find that to be true. Let's just run through it really quick. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. Then, of course, we've got to add our decimals back in. We've got 1 decimal place in the factors, so we add that back into the product. 4 times 1 is 4. Next one. 4 times 5/10ths. I hope that we all recognize that 5/10ths is the same as 1/2. That's a good one to memorize if you haven't already memorized that. So we probably know just by looking at that 4 times 1/2 or 4 times 5/10ths is 2. But let's just go ahead and multiply it out so that we can see it true with the algorithm here. So 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. We have 1 decimal place in our factors, so 1 decimal place in our product, and our answer is 2. Okay, now 4 times 25/100ths. We probably also can look at this problem and recognize that our answer is going to be 1, because if you think about 25/100ths, you probably already know that that is the same thing as, like, say, quarters of a dollar, because you know that $1 equals 100 cents, or a quarter equals 25 cents. But let's go ahead and work this out as well. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. And we have 2 decimal places in our factors. So that means we have 2 decimal places in our product. And our answer is 1. All right, let's do a couple more together. We have 50 times 1.5. So you know you're going to end up with a number more than 50, but less than 100. Oops, you know what I want to do? I'm going to, well, we'll just do it this way. Never mind. Okay, 50 times 0, or I'm sorry, 5 times 0, starting over here, is 0. 5 times 5 is 25, then add a 0 on the next line for our placeholder. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. Let's add those together. And then we have 1 decimal place in our factors. So we're going to have 1 decimal place in our product. And our answer is 75. 50 times 0 and 5 tenths. Let's see what that works out to be. We know we should get a number less than 50, right? And we've already talked about how 5 tenths is the same as 1/2. So I bet all of you right now know exactly what we are going to get when we multiply this out. Oops, I forgot my little multiplication sign over there. Okay, 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 5 is 25. And then we've got some 0, 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. And then remember to count the decimal places in the factors. So I have 1. So I'm going to have 1 in my product. Ooh. And my answer is 25. Ooh, look at that. I already gave you the answer on this next one. All right, 50 times 25 hundredths. Let's work it out. You've already got the answer in front of you, but let's go ahead and run through the algorithm. All right, so 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 5 is 10. We have 2 decimal places in the factors, so I have 2 in my product, and my answer is 12 and 5 tenths. Okay, go ahead and pause the video, work out these toyos, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, so you should have gotten 6 and 25 hundredths for the first one. For letter B, 100 times 1 and 5 tenths, you should have gotten 150. For letter C, 5 tenths times 5 tenths, you should have gotten 25 hundredths. Letter D, there's the answer for letter D, but I want to go ahead and run through this because this one is a little bit more challenging. Let me just switch back to the pen here really quick. Okay, so for letter D, you've got 3 and 692 thousandths times 2 and 73 hundredths. So let's remember we're going to line up our digits, not our decimals. So let's run through it together. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 9 is 27. 3 times 6 is 18. Plus 2 is 20. 3 times 3 is 9. Plus 2 is 11. Go to the next line and add a placeholder. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 9 is 63. Plus 1 is 64. 7 times 6 is 42. Plus 6 is 48. 7 times 3 is 21. Plus 4 is 25. And last line here, 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 9 is 18. 2 times 6 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. 2 times 3 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. And now let's add these up. Let's see, 9 plus 8 is 17. 2 plus 5 is 7. Plus 3 is 10. 1 plus 2 is 3. Plus 7 is 10. And then we count how many decimal places we have in the factors. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's go down here to the product and count 5 decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's how we came up with that number, 10 and, gosh, what is that? 7,916 hundred thousandths. All right, you guys, your homework is multiplying decimals worksheet 135. So hopefully you got a copy of that when your person brought home your buddy sheet. Good night.